Hi, everyone. Welcome to this discussion on transitioning to a new normal with Lisa Sarimi. My name is Elise Ekman, and I am on the Access Elite team that has brought this event to you today. For those of you who aren't familiar, Access Elite is a health and wellness company that provides on-demand wellness content, same-day prescription delivery, and facilitates live virtual events such as these that you can tune into every day, and much more. We are so glad that we can facilitate this event and bring a little bit of positivity and connection to your day. So I just want to take a moment and thank each of you for being here. And with that, I am thrilled to introduce our guest today. We have Lisa Sarimi, who is a marriage and family therapist, yoga instructor, and a transformation coach. Lisa?
Thank you so much, Elise. It's always a pleasure to be here and to connect with everyone. Today, we're going to be focusing a little bit on kind of what's happening in our world, in our lives individually and collectively, and applying that to some concepts around transformation and metamorphosis. So let's get started. So some of the items we'll go over today is, what is the overview of kind of what is transformation and metamorphosis, and what is the relationship to the different phases of different life transitions. And you could look at what we're going through right now as a transition, even for our collective, right? So it's kind of a good time. And then where are we today? What is a new normal? What phase or portal are we in? And that'll make more sense as we get into this. How do we manage the transition into a new normal? And a lot of times I will leave you with questions for your own self-inquiry. So if you have a pen, paper, it's a really good thing to grab. So this image right here is a model for metamorphosis. And I've been working on a thesis and a program that I'll be launching this year, hopefully, that breaks down really like how we can transform or go through our own metamorphosis when we're going through transition. It breaks it down into 4 portals, just like these 4 stages that a caterpillar goes through into becoming a butterfly. So the first one is the portal of change. That would be, for example, when all of these changes started to unravel and a lot of us had to make adjustments to our lifestyles. And that kind of just puts us right into that second portal, which is the portal of adjustment. So when the caterpillar is first born out of the egg, there's a lot of change. It's gone from being in this contained space into this whole new world, and it just eats and it eats and it grows and it grows. And that is really where it's in its portal of adjustment. That's where we are, where we're adjusting to whatever change has taken place. And all of our energy, just like the caterpillar, goes towards how do we adjust to this new way of being in a world that's new, right? And then as we go into that, we also then find ourselves in a portal of surrender, where we have to be willing to literally let certain things die off. So, and this is a big realm. It's not, it could be belief systems. It could be the way we've been doing life. It could be, if we're looking at like a transition in the context of relationship, right? It could look totally different. So part of what I really want to invite you to do today is, as I'm talking about this, really just make it a little more personal for you as far as where you're at in your process right now. Where do you feel like you're at with the change that's happening in your life individually, or maybe what's happening to our, in our collective. And then that fourth portal is the portal of emergence, right? So something has to die off, yet something is always born from that die off. I really love this quote by Christina Baker Klein. It feels like it's really fitting for where we are right now. I am halfway between 2 worlds, the known and the unknown. I feel as transparent as the wind, as if my spirit is hovering in the sky waiting to land. I am driving towards a future I can't see, leaving behind a past that already feels distant. Nothing is clear, and yet the trees are sharp against the sky. I can see the hard outlines of everything. So, just taking a moment here before I go and start to say what I'm going to say on the topic, I want to give you an opportunity to really just kind of let what I have spoken so far marinate, as well as what you already know about metamorphosis and transformation and the maybe journey of the caterpillar to the butterfly. And also considering all the things that are happening in your world and in the collective, where you might feel we are right now or where you are right now. It doesn't have to be, you could have experiences of a couple different places at one time even. So if you're like, well, I kind of feel like I can be in that adjustment phase, but I also feel like I'm coming to a place of surrender, so you can also be in that in between. So just taking a moment to connect to where it feels and how it feels personal for you. And then I'm going to just kind of also dive in and speak to some of these portals and where we might be maybe more as a collective, right? There is this big change that occurred where we had to quarantine, right? And everything got shut down, and it affected us individually and collectively. It affected the way we do business. We'll get into some of those more details as we move forward. And then we've all been kind of like adjusting, right? So um, what's interesting about these first two is I feel like you can kind of bounce back and forth, because there will be one big change, and then from that one big change, all these like ripple effects of other changes that can occur. So we're always kind of doing this dance between taking in the change, adapting and adjusting to the change, and in some cases, like I was saying, having to do a full surrender where we're really letting go of the way we thought something was or was going to look like, so that we can move into that next stage. Right now, I feel like most of us are going to experience ourselves in one of these three portals. So again, one of the things that as human beings is really important for us to do is to be able to make meaning out of what's happening in our life. And in transformation, part of how we can do that metamorphosis and part of what inspires us to keep moving forward is to have that connection to a future of emergence, emerging as a butterfly, let's say. So it's important for us to take a look as we're moving through these shifts, to really be with them, even though they're a little uncomfortable, and to really look at how are we being shifted by what's happening, and what do we need to let go of, and what, all of these things, like really just being present and being in those questions as we move through these different spaces. So just taking a moment, again, I want to ask a few questions. Again, where do you feel like you might be facing this individually? Where do you feel like we're facing this collectively? And how? How do we navigate moving towards a portal of emergence? And I want to just give you guys a moment to think about that. And I know that Elise set up the chat box. So if you feel inspired to share, feel free to share, no pressure. But I know that when we share, it's really a gift, right? Because we share with each other, and then that's how we learn more about ourselves, actually. So if there's anything that's there for you around these big topics and you want to throw it in the chat box, feel free to do that. Otherwise, maybe just take that pen and paper and work with even just writing the questions down if you don't feel like the time is now to drop into this deeper. Okay. So I did want to also take some time, to talk about what is the new normal. It's almost like a cliche word, it feels like. But it's really just, what are we stepping into that is no longer the same as the way it was. You know, certain things that aren't going to be common that were common before, new commons, so to speak. So one of the things we could, and again, I want to let you feel free if there's anything that you feel inspired to throw it in the chat box, but wearing face masks is a new thing, right? It was before COVID. I mean, we weren't walking around and that wasn't a common thing, but now it's just really common, right? When we're out in public to see people wearing masks and in complete different capacities. Sometimes it's in a store. Sometimes, you'll see people wearing them on the beach when they're walking, right? So that's a new adjusting thing to see. The way we eat out has shifted. So if any of you have been out to eat at a restaurant, the protocols are different. The way you access the menus is different because they're really minimizing touch. And so that's been a really big shift. And we might notice it when we start to go out into the world and we start to do the things that we used to do, what some of those new things are that we're seeing. Also, working out, it has shifted, right? A lot of us that regularly work out, when we went into this quarantine space, adjusted to online resources, or maybe we did it in other ways. And now, although some of the yoga studios and some of the gyms are going to be opening up, there's going to be new protocols and new ways to navigate those environments that we're all going to have to adjust to. Our workplaces, for some of us, going back to an office isn't going to happen, right? So just really like how taking the moments to really look at how that's impacting you, and what ways are you adjusting, and what ways are you also taking care of all the needs. I want to put that out there too, like we have needs as human beings. And so, for example, with the workplace, what made me think about it is, when we're not getting any connection, and work is a lot of where we get that. Sometimes it's like, okay, how do I make sure that those needs are being met in different ways? Our healthcare is shifting, right? There's a lot more happening with telemedicine as a therapist and as a yoga therapist and a coach. Like everything just shifted online right away. So that was an interesting shift. Um, Sports and entertainment, that's a big shift, right? These industries are being shifted by what's happening in our world. Religion, just some of the rituals and the practices that a lot of different religions have had to be modified to adapt to what's happening. Ways of doing business, traveling, education is a big one, right? I was just wrapping up my master's program when this all kind of happened, and everything went online. And so it just seems like that's gone very virtual. The way we do transactions, in many places, cash is no longer being accepted. Companies are becoming cash free. And so this brings us to the technology piece, right? Like the way we're using technology, and not just like in the ways that it can be used, but also like who's using it, right? Because of the position we were put in, a lot of people that really were resisting technology or using technology in particular ways kind of broke down those barriers and began adapting to becoming more able to use those technology services. For those of us that are single, dating is completely shifting, right? So there's a new normal around that, and even just our social worlds and environments. So how do we manage transitioning into this new normal? I always think that like the more we can be conscious and be aware and expand our awareness of how we're receiving these shifts and how it feels for us, and really kind of coming back to what I was just saying, like what are our needs and how do we make sure that those needs are being met? What are our values? Like some of our values are going to be really brought to the surface as we navigate a new normal. Um, and I think it's really important that we remain flexible. The more rigid we get, the more attached we get. I do a lot with yoga with a lot of the clients I work with. And one of the big things we do is just kind of getting, loosening that grip, so to speak, and becoming a little more flexible, a little more malleable, a little a little more available to be shape shifted by the change that's happening. And of course, because of our nervous systems and because of the way that we're designed, a lot of times what happens is we can dive into this fear, right? And this fear can really put us in a place where we start to expect the worst. So another thing that's important is to really watch, how are we reacting? Are we going into fear? Are we going into a survival state? And if we are, what are some ways that we can help regulate our nervous system? Through a lot of yoga practices, and yoga is not the only way. A lot of the work I do with my clients is empower them around even being able to know when is the nervous system out of balance and how can I bring it back to a state where there's balance. Um, Bringing in the time for acknowledging what is ending, what is being born, acknowledging the loss that's happening along the way. It's really important so we can digest that and allow it to kind of move through without it leaving heavy things in our space. And really just giving ourselves that time when we're going through big shifts and we're going into these big new normals to really listen to our soul, to go into those deeper places, to find that deeper meaning and to find that purpose that resonates for each and every one of us. So again, if you have ever been on any of my talks, I really like to make it more personal for you. And really the way to do that is to ask questions, right? A lot of our power is in the questions that we're asking ourselves each and every day. So I'll leave these questions up for a moment. These are really good ones, even if you're just jotting them down for journal prompts at any time in your life. Really being able to like define it for yourself. What does your new normal look like? Or what is it gonna look like? There is a part of you that also gets to create here, right? So it's not just this happens and I'm just given something. I get to actually participate in it. So what am I stepping into? What am I leaving behind or letting go of? What is the head of my dragon and what is at the tail? What is being born in the center of me? What is dying or burning away? And then also the importance of, even while we're going maybe through these other portals of surrender and adjustment and change, can we leave the space for a little bit of hope, a little bit of vision, envisioning what that emergence might look like? And how do we nourish that vision, right? So um, one of the things I do a lot with clients is collaging is a really great way to take image and really let the image capture your vision and nourish it by just giving it existence. I have some of these are just more journal prompts that I've used another time. I just think they're really good and powerful ones. When we're tending to the soul, it's really tapping into our heart's consciousness and the voice that comes from there, not so much up here. So, what is the longing in your heart? When we get wrapped up in fear, we forget to even connect to and ask these types of questions. And they're at our center. Now, the thing about transformation is it's exciting to emerge into something new, but the signing up for transformation is actually really grueling because those portals that we were just speaking of are painful, right? When something is dying away, it can be really painful, right? So, what do you feel in your process right now? Is there something that you want to say to yourself? Sometimes there's something that we need to hear to acknowledge ourselves for, and we're not getting it from the outside, right? So the opportunity to really look at that. What is that you need to hear? And what do you want to say to yourself? And what do you want to say to humans all around the world? you know? But like in your space of safety right now, sometimes it doesn't feel safe to even be able to express ourselves in that way. But really, it's important for us to be able to still use that expression and voice in a way that feels safe. So the journaling of that is a way to do it. And then what's the gift you want to bring to the world through your experience here on Earth? We're all here with a gift. And then, is there something that you would like to transform? And when I say transform, I don't mean change, because there's always, it seems like as human beings, there tends to be this like, I want to change this thing so I can fix this thing. And, you know, uh, transforming is like a completely dying off, as I mentioned, and something new being born. And so there's no shame in that. It's not like, oh, there's something wrong with the way it is, so I have to change it. It's more that through the natural evolution of transformation, because of the change, because of the shifts that are always happening around us, we have to remain that flexible being that can shape shift with it as our life shifts. So a lot of the work that I do is in the realm of yoga and depth psychology. When I bring in the yoga to really help empower people to regulate and to better know their nervous systems. And we do that through a lot of breath work. The physical postures help with that. And then I rest yoga nidra meditation. And yeah, I think yoga is really a practice, or many, many, many practices that have been designed over time that give us the opportunity to really learn ways to alleviate and minimize our suffering and to find a way to integrate our inner wholeness. So that's one way that I use the yoga practices when I work with people. It's very individualized. And then the depth psychology practices, they're deeper practices. It's that soul work, right? So the yoga helps us create the container so that you feel contained and safe in yourself, so that we can do things like active imagination, really using the imaginal realm and allowing that to do work with our shadow material, which I know Elise is going to talk about it, but next week we're going to talk about really what is the shadow. And there is a lot of it that is present right now with everything that's happening um, in our world. It's important to integrate it in. What we tend to do is repress it and try to get rid of it and try to put it away, like we don't want to look at it. And then it shows up later in different ways that are not for our highest good. So another way we can work with this content is through personification and myth, metaphor, and symbol. And I do a lot of that work with my clients. And then with the relationship that I have with Access Elite, I offer really discounted rates just for Access Elite members. So that wraps up today's presentation. If you have any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Oh,
I did have a question. I can just go ahead and kick us off here. And if you do have a question, please feel free. You can unmute yourself at any time, or you could type into the chat if you'd prefer to ask in that way, and I could ask Lisa on your behalf. But Lisa, I would love to know, you had mentioned one of your introspective questions was what the head of my dragon and tail of my dragon looks like, I believe.
yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Kind of like, what am I leading with and what's right there following
Okay,
as I go?
perfect.
And that can like, I think when big change happens, things, our priorities shift, right? We went from really crowded highways all the time, and then all of a sudden, like, many of us weren't even getting in our cars, right? So that can change based on the change that's happening around us.
Okay. So is it sort of incorporating more intention, would you say? Or does it kind of tie into intention?
Yeah, I mean, and one example could be like, some people right now for them, it really has affected their financial situation because of work, right? Some people, like the adjustment was, I'm working at home. So maybe before, the head of their dragon was like a promotion they were working for, or, you know, something that was leading them. And now the head of their dragon is finding a job or finding that new career. Um, and the
Gotcha.
tail is something that just kind of follows behind.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have a question that they would like to ask? Okay. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for this session. That was wonderful.
Absolutely.
And I am looking forward to next week's session. As Lisa mentioned, next Tuesday, June 16th at 11 a.m., we are going to be doing a session on shadow work. And I know she's very excited about that session as well. So you can sign up for that at accesselitenow.com/events. And of course, you can book your private consultations with Lisa through the Access Elite app.